Do you have any recruiting tidbits for us coming out of this huge visit weekend for Alabama?
Well, Gary, I think Alabama fans are getting a little antsy. They're expecting these commitments right after the weekends, the last 2 weekends, and there's not been much action at all, really, in that regard. But, we've kind of been saying, I've been telling you, and I've certainly been posting on Tider Insider for quite a while now, that don't expect a lot of action until right down near the end. And I know that's kind of hard to accept, but that's just really the way it is, because all of these guys that Alabama is recruiting right now, many of them still have visits this upcoming weekend, and they're not ready to make decisions. And so I think that's made some Alabama fans a little bit uneasy, but that's just kind of the way it is, and you could kind of see it coming from a while back.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the nature of it with these guys, these five-star guys. They want to wait. They want to let the process play out. They've got all the major football programs in the country vying for their signature, and it's just kind of the way things go. But you're right about Alabama fans. They have a weekend like this one, and they really want, they want 3 or 4 commitments to come out of it, and just going to have to be patient. Having said that, Twitter gives us a glimpse into these recruiting weekends. All the prospects like to post pictures and so forth. It certainly looks like it was a great weekend for Alabama, beginning with the national championship parade and celebration. And I know you and I both expect Ben Davis to go to Alabama. Still, he's played it close to the vest. But after this weekend, it does look indeed like this is where he is gonna wind up, that he went ahead and said Alabama is his leader. And that's the first time he said that in a while.
Yeah. And I, like I said, just my feeling on it, I think he's been leaning to Alabama all along. I'm not saying that he hasn't given strong consideration to those other schools and really liked them and whatever, but I just think that probably Wayne, the fact that his father, Wayne Davis, played here, and all of the history that goes with that connection, and also just the need for Alabama at linebacker, that all of those things kind of play together with the fact that he's only from how far to go? 35, 40 minutes away?
Yeah, 30 minutes, man.
Yeah. I mean, all of that certainly plays into it, and I think that you're right. I think a lot of people some Alabama fans have kind of worried a little bit when I don't think they should have.
Visiting with Rodney Orr from Tider Insider TV and TiderInsider.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Tider Insider. That's easy enough. His good buddy, Ben Davis's good buddy, Lindell Mack Wilson, another linebacker from Carver in Montgomery. He's another guy that's really enjoyed the recruiting process, but Alabama looks to be in a very strong position with him as well.
Well, yeah, you're right. He has enjoyed the process. He's been a little bit more difficult, I think, to read than Ben Davis has. I don't know exactly what he's going to do. He's supposed to visit Florida this coming weekend, and he's said, I think he's even said as late as yesterday, that they're still his leader. But, I do think that these guys have fun with the recruiting process, and I do think that Alabama's I would say, if I had to make a guess, I think Mack Wilson probably ends up at Alabama. Again, you never really know what these guys might do, but I would think that he probably ends up at Alabama. It's a big weekend for linebackers to visit. You talked about Ben Davis. You talked about Mack Wilson. McKay Juarez is a great player out of the state of California, an outside linebacker from Torrance, who has been long considered an UCLA lean. I know that Ole Miss has been in there as well, but he came in. He had a fantastic visit here. If you've looked at his Twitter feed, you saw, the things he was tweeting out. I think Tosh LaPoy does a great job of recruiting, and some people think, well, maybe the guy's just kind of playing games and building Alabama up. I don't think he would do that. He has a good relationship with Tosh LaPoy, and there's a lot of respect there. So I do think that he's very interested. Now, would he pull the trigger and come all the way across country? I don't know. I mean, that's one of those that you're going to have to watch and see. Dontavius Jackson out of the Houston area at Leaf Elstick High School there in Texas. I think he's the best pure middle linebacker, Mike linebacker type probably in the country. And he was also in this weekend. I think Alabama's got a good shot at him, but Michigan's in there, been in there very strongly, Florida State, Texas. So we'll have to see. But if they got those 3 of those 4 or all 4 of them, what a linebacker crew.
Absolutely. You and I have talked often about what a good year it is in the state of Mississippi, how difficult it is to go in there and pull prospects out of that state. Alabama is certainly trying with several of these guys, a number of whom were in this past weekend. Let's begin with Jeffrey Simmons, the big defensive end from Noxubee County. I know that this is a guy that probably will play as a freshman regardless of where he goes. Alabama and Ole Miss look to be taking it down to the wire. I know he's scheduled to go to Ole Miss next weekend. Do you think Alabama made up any ground with him?
Well, yeah, I think he's first of all, he's a fantastic player. He's a great player. And I think when you look at him and what he might do, Ole Miss has felt very comfortable. They felt extremely confident for a while now that they had him locked up. Whether they have or not, I don't know. But I think Alabama certainly has felt like it's had a chance, and they've recruited him really hard and really well. I think Bo Davis has done a fantastic job of recruiting him, and they're in a position. Now, I'm not really sure which direction, it'll end up going. The way things have gone in that state with guys that Ole Miss has targeted, obviously in the last few years has not been very good for Alabama. But, maybe this one's different. But really the thing with him, the thing with Jeffrey Simmons, Gary, is people are just, all the stories or whatever somebody says or whatever writes on the internet, I would just disregard it. You're going to just have to wait, see what he does at whatever time he announces on signing day.
An interesting prospect to me, and you know how I am when I see somebody that I like, I don't care how many stars they've got next to their name. If I think they can play, I'll say it. I think Scott Lashley, the offensive tackle from West Point, can really play. I think the upside's unbelievable on this guy. He's huge. He won't turn 18, I think, until July. I think his best football clearly is in front of him. He's a guy that flew a little bit under the radar. Obviously, Mississippi State's strong with him. He's got some ties to that school, but he was in this weekend. Alabama wants another offensive tackle in this class. Any chance Scott Lashley might be that guy?
Well, he had a great visit. I don't know if they can overcome, he was originally committed to Mississippi State, and I know he has a lot of allegiance there. He has a connection with Johnny Cooks, the former Mississippi State great linebacker. He's a family member, and I don't know if they can overcome that, all the connections to Mississippi State. I do know he had a great visit. We'll see. Just have to kind of see where that one goes. They also had another great offensive line prospect in, Landon Dickerson out of Hudson, North Carolina, who's some people have rated as a 5-star player. And I know he was completely blown away by his visit in every regard. When you talk about from the players, the coaches, the support staff, the academics, he was completely blown away by his visit. And, Florida State's been in there, Tennessee's been in there, Auburn, maybe a couple of other schools. But, Alabama certainly made up a lot of ground with him this weekend, and that's going to be one that I think is going to be interesting to watch his decision.
Two prospects from Starkville High School, A.J. Brown, coveted wide receiver, and then another kind of under-the-radar guy, defensive lineman Cobi Jones, were both in this week as well.
Well, Cobi Jones is an excellent prospect at Starkville High School. Been kind of overlooked. He may not be a guy that's ready to make an instant impact, but when you see him, you see a guy maybe like I'm just going to say like a DJ Petway that comes in, red shirts, whatever, and develops a little bit and becomes a really good player for you. And I think Cobi Jones is maybe one of those kind of players. Mississippi State has got to be considered the leader with him right now, although he did have a great visit, and he loved Alabama. And I think, if Alabama went in that direction, I think they could, maybe have some success with him. Of course, A.J. Brown is his teammate, and A.J. visited Alabama last weekend. He'll visit Ole Miss next weekend. And, again, I think that one is going to go down to the wire with Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss is in there too.
Talking Alabama football recruiting with Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com and Tider Insider TV. Nigel Knott, the running back from Germantown High School in Madison, cornerback from Madison, Mississippi, Germantown High School. Your guess is that he will wind up at Alabama?
I think that's where he's been leaning for quite a while. Yeah, so I kind of project him. People always want to make a prediction, want you to make a prediction. So that's what I would predict right now, unless something changed.
Rodney, we know Alabama needs another running back in this class. B.J. Emmons from North Carolina, good-looking player, still a little discrepancy there as far as his academics are concerned. I think Alabama thinks he'll make it. His high school coaches said he'll make it, but they need another running back, regardless of whether Emmons gets in or not. Speaking of the Mississippi connection, this is not a Mississippi kid, but he is committed to Ole Miss. The running back from Texas, Devon Penniman, in this weekend. Any chance Alabama can flip him?
Well, I think there's a chance. I really thought there was maybe a better chance than I do today, after the visit. He had a great visit, but talking to some people, I think distance might be a little bit of a factor. You say, well, he's committed to Ole Miss. It's not really I think the team to possibly watch out for is Texas A&M.
Okay.
It would not surprise me if he flipped, if he flips, that he flipped to Texas A&M. But we'll see. There's 10 days left, 9 days left, and he's got a lot to think about.
Speaking of running backs, I find this hard to believe in this day and age with all the information that's out there on these guys. But
yeah.
But you and Rudy Orman and some other people that follow recruiting very closely have come across this running back / quarterback out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Joshua Jacobs, who put up mind-boggling numbers in a city where there's a lot of attention. Great programs in the Big 12 surrounding him, yet Joshua Jacobs has not had a lot of offers. Is this, though, a guy he projects probably as a running back at this level that Alabama might try to get involved with here late?
Well, I mean, it could be interesting. I watched his tape. He's an exciting-looking player. The only question I had was his exact size, and I've been told he was measured at 5'10 3/4", 197, so he's right at 200 pounds. And, you watched him, too, and, I mean, I don't really know what there is not to like about him. I know that I posted his video, by the way, on Tighter Insider, and just to get the response, and just show you how fans are. I mean, this guy's got a phenomenal tape. And they, if he don't have 4 or 5 stars by his name, people want to pass, but you forget about guys that really in the past that maybe weren't highly regarded, that ended up great players, great talent. I mean, what about, just looking way back, how about a guy named Kerry Good? He wasn't highly regarded, Gary, as you remember.
That's right.
And he was fantastic as a freshman. So, there's guys that come out of nowhere, and this guy is one of those guys. I know you're really high on him too. Oh,
he's a freak athlete. I mean, he's got the speed. He could fill that Kenyon Drake role a little bit, I think. I'm just still amazed that he hasn't received more attention, but maybe that's about to change. While we're on running backs, another guy that I want to ask you about, because I get asked about him a lot. You know how fans are in the state about in-state guys, and I am a little curious as to why Alabama hasn't shown him more attention. I know he's not the fastest kid, but Trey Nation from Leeds High School, thick kid, very productive running back at a great high school program. Cincinnati, Louisville, Arkansas State, those type programs showing him a lot of attention, not a lot of love from the SEC. Is this a young man that Alabama still might get involved with late in the process if they don't get a commitment from a running back? What's the latest on him?
I would hate to say no because you don't ever know. But I think right now you've mentioned Penniman. There's some other guys that they're recruiting. Brandon Stevens out of Plano, Texas, is a guy that was committed to Stanford that just decommitted, that's got Alabama, on his list. They were his second choice before he committed to Stanford. Another guy to keep an eye out on, visited last weekend out of Coral Gables, Florida, Amir Rasul, who is committed right now to Florida State. There's some other guys that I think Alabama has a really good shot at. You mentioned that Jacobs kid, Joshua Jacobs, who might be a guy that I know Alabama's aware of. I really don't know that Trey Nation, would be in the mix at this point. I'm not going to say he's not, but I think there's some other guys that Alabama's, kind of looking at. Before I turn you loose, defensive linemen, always a priority. That's kind of where Nick Saban's built this program. Everybody's after them. You look at Alabama, certainly they've got the Hulk committed, the big defensive tackle out of Texas. But numbers-wise, they seem to be a little bit behind right now. I know that that will probably change, but what's the latest with defensive line recruiting with Alabama? Well, because of the need, they've got 3. Raekwon Davis is pretty, he's solidified himself for now as a commitment out of Meridian. You mentioned Kendall Jones, the Hulk, out of Texas, and then Quentin Williams out of Winona, who's got a chance to be an outstanding player. And, there are several others that they're recruiting. We talked about Jeffrey Simmons out of Mississippi. You've got Michael Carter, who's an interior player out of Jackson, Georgia. Derek Brown from Sugar Hill, Georgia. There's other guys. Nick Coe out of North Carolina that's committed to Auburn. I'm not sure what, his status is. He's not talking, but he's certainly been a guy that's mentioned. I know I'm forgetting somebody off the top of my head that's really kind of and it's kind of bugging me, that Jamar King's a junior college player that's an interior player that visited this weekend. Alabama and Ohio State seem to be his top two. If Alabama decided to go in that direction. I don't think Jonathan Congo, I don't know if he committed to anybody yesterday. Somebody said he may have, but I haven't really checked on him. Alabama was in that pretty thick until this past week. They need to get themselves 2 or 3 more at least of those guys, and if they can do that, then I think it's going to be would be a great defensive line class.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Congo. I mean, it's kind of one of those curious cases where it looked like Alabama was going for him hard. He appeared ready to commit to Alabama. Then the next thing you know, they're not in the picture. Is that a case of Congo changing his mind, Alabama looking elsewhere? What happened there?
I just think Alabama, they're evaluating their needs constantly and what they're looking for. And I think when you look at what they need guys who can play the run and play the pass, that have the ability to do both. And not that Congo doesn't, but I think he looks to be more of a specialty type player, specialist pass rushing specialist right now. So maybe that's something that's a consideration. And look, you've also got a guy that visited here this weekend. It's a 5-star defensive end / jack linebacker type that maybe is a lot like Congo, and Terrell Hall.
Good point.
So that's a guy that Alabama's in the final 2 for out of Washington, D.C. So, you can't take them all. Hopefully you just get 3 or 4 more that you really want. And if they do that, it's been extremely successful.
Last question. Jawan Pass, the Louisville commitment quarterback from Columbus, Georgia, was in this past weekend, but reading between the lines on Tider Insider, you don't really expect Alabama to take another quarterback in this class.
I don't. I didn't, even when he came in for a visit, when it was posted everywhere he was coming in for a visit. I don't see it, Gary. I think they've got Hurts in this class, and Jake Fromm continues to say he's solidly committed to Alabama. So, and he's a 2017 commitment out of the state of Georgia. So, I think they're pretty set in that regard.
Good stuff, Rodney. We'll have much more on Tider Insider TV tomorrow night at 6:30. Signing day just 9 days away. Hard to believe. And I know you're going to have tons of updates between now and Wednesday on TiderInsider.com.
Yes, we are. Tons of. Well, hopefully we do. These kids are getting harder and harder to reach, Gary. It's unbelievable.
But you're going to work to reach them, I know that.
We certainly are. We're trying.
TiderInsider.com, folks, still just $48 a year. Great information available. Thanks, Rodney.
All right, buddy. Take care.